Welcome to Surviving Academe as a person of color. My name is Dr. Zena Lundy, and I am the Associate Director of Undergraduate Psychology, as well as a professor at a small New England college. Today is the first installment, the first podcast that I am releasing on Surviving Academe as a person of color, and I want to share with you a little bit about how it came to be. Academe is unfortunately a very lonely place for people that look like me and other demographics that identify as persons of color. The research indicates that less than 2% of Black women ascend to full professor. At my university, I was recently told by a professor that no person of color has obtained full at my university. That is astounding to me. And there are a couple of reasons that go into why that occurs, why people that are born with TANs, is what I like to call them, do not ascend to full. We're going to be discussing this over many episodes. I want to discuss grants. I want to discuss mentorship. I want to discuss community. I want to discuss allyship. I want to discuss males of every person of color group in academe, because for some reason, they typically get farther than women do. I mean, I think we sort of understand, but I think I want to have on someone who works in that discipline to explain why it is that women fail to ascend as well as women of color. What we find is that women live at the lowest rank. Across demographics, women live at the lowest rank within the academy. So we know that Black women faculty are persistently subjected to scrutiny that undermines their legitimacy, authority, and belonging. There is ongoing surveillance as an institutional mechanism, and these demographics are constantly being surveilled, not just by students, but also by the larger community. I myself, on one of my first days at my current job, was in faculty parking. And I really think that this is where the seed was planted, but I was in faculty parking.
Excuse me.
And you can see that video right
Why
here.
Why are you in faculty parking?
I was in faculty parking,
really tired
and an
of
older
people
white
parking in
woman
faculty
walked up to my
parking
car
and making me late for
and
class.
tapped on the window.
Please
I
tell
was
me
eating
why
lunch in
you're
my
parked
car,
in my
and
space.
she asked me, why was I in faculty parking?
I'm parked in faculty parking.
And she wouldn't leave until she wanted to see my ID, and I was like, and so this is just an example of the sort of otherization that we experience in the academy. So I think for this first episode, I'm going to unpack some of those sort of uncomfortable experiences, and in future episodes, I will be talking about, with people that hold that knowledge, I'm going to be talking about ways to attenuate these situations. Like, these things are occurring, and it is unlikely that they will stop occurring, but sort of what can we do as individuals and as community to address them and move beyond them, right? So what I find, and what has been represented in the literature, and I maybe will place some articles up here so that you can review them. Go to Google Scholar, they're going to be free, so that you know that I'm not just talking, like, this is really happening. So what has been found in the literature is that people of color, of all demographics that are not white, when they are teaching in the professoriate, which means the rank of professor, that they are routinely questioned in so many different ways. Students question them about their syllabus choices, what they choose to put on the syllabus. Students can complain to chairs or deans, and chairs, deans, and provosts fail to a large degree to support the faculty member in their choices, which is problematic because the faculty member has already been vetted by HR at the university. So it is odd that it has been agreed to hire this person, but yet anyone can answer a question, and then that person, who happens to typically be of color, always has to justify. I myself, pretty early in my career, started my work at a Hispanic serving institution. And I didn't know it at that time, but something really amazing occurred. And I'll tell you what it is. I had been working at the main campus, which was largely Hispanic serving, and getting great reviews. It's doing great for me. I'm getting a lot from it, and I'm giving a lot, right? It's going amazing. I did have some issues that the administration supported me so amazingly, and I did not really understand at that time how significant that was. At some point, I agreed to go teach for additional money at another university that happened to be in a largely Caucasian neighborhood. And immediately, my leadership at the main campus started getting complaints about me. And my leadership at the main campus really got behind me and were like, this is how you're going to answer this. You have to answer, but this is how you answer this. And they made it clear that they believed in me. And I really did not understand at that time that that might be the last time that I experienced such. To this day, I remain close to the president of that university. The students at the white campus, or the campus in the white neighborhood, actually reached out to the president. And he called me at home, and we had a long talk. And recently, he supervised my postdoc in community college leadership. So he really believed in what I was attempting to do and did not just take someone's word over mine. And I didn't understand what a big deal that was at that time. However, I would leave that university for other opportunities and more money and a more permanent position, and to sort of rise in academe. And what I found was that I was instantly questioned about every single thing I was doing. I literally have had conversations about how I dress. And what the research indicates, Intuit et al., is that across demographics, this is what people of color who teach at the professor level experience. There is a part of the article, again, that was above my head a couple of minutes ago, where a Chinese born woman explains that her evals typically say, if we don't agree with her, then it's a problem. It's either her way or the highway. There's a lot of complaints about how the individual behaves when you are from a different demographic, which simply means that the person wasn't born where these students were born. I'm not sure how that would make it into one's eval, but it does. Another thing that students complain about, that is a theme of the literature, is that the professor is too harsh, that the professor is unyielding, that the professor doesn't consult students. Yeah, that the professor doesn't consult students on the curriculum. So that is akin to questioning the professor's pedagogical leanings and essentially why they're there. They are there to teach the research that they've worked on, that they believe contributes to the discipline, and yet they are being questioned about why they are doing such. I'm going to tell you a couple of more stories about what caused me to be interested in doing this podcast, because I think that, we used to say at Harvard that me-search is research. And so what spawns one's reasoning for doing things is largely a consequence of what they've experienced. And so I want to tell you a couple of more insane stories about what I've experienced before I get into other things. So one summer, it was the summer after I earned my doctorate in educational leadership. I hold a master's in psychology from Harvard University. And I was sitting on my sofa. It had been a really rough year. It was the year that I earned my doctorate. So I had taught and had worked on my doctorate. I was extremely exhausted, and I was just really loving sitting on my sofa doing absolutely nothing. I got an email, and then I got a phone call from what turned out to be the chair of psychology at Connecticut College. Connecticut College is obviously in Connecticut, but from where I work, it's about 60 minutes, depending. So she wanted to chat, and essentially what was happening is that I was being headhunted. And she had read my reviews online, she had vetted me, she had looked at some of my research, and she wasn't calling me to interview, she was calling me to offer me a job. Great. I explained, my pedagogy. I explained that I am tremendously multicultural leaning. I explained that all of my courses, no matter what they are, even if they are Psychology 101, they're going to be taught from a multicultural lens. I'm going to highlight researchers of color. She seemed on board. Everything seemed to be going sort of amazing. She said that the rate at her college was better than any in the region, which isn't true. It's not true. But she told me the rate, and it was a good rate. It wasn't the best in the region. But anyway, I agreed to take the job. I want to say first day of school, she's in my classroom waiting for me. I thought that was tremendously odd. She is waiting for me in my classroom. So that should have rung some bells. But I want to say the second week, the syllabus was out, the syllabus was explained, the syllabus was understood. And she sent me an email stating that a student had indicated that I had failed to call on them when they had raised their hands. And she wanted to know if we could talk about it. And I was like, what? You want to talk about a student who raised their hand and told you that I didn't call on them? Now, what was interesting about this particular class is it was a small class and it was in a small room. So there's no way that I didn't see the student's hand. I know exactly what happened. What happened is the student became aware that although it said on the syllabus that class participation was grade oriented, they didn't believe that until they received a grade that day that they had failed to participate. So they reached out to the chair. So I responded, no, I definitely know that he did not raise his hand. And she said, well, I let him know that I was definitely in support of you and that he should reach out to you. And I said, I don't feel supported. I respond, we're emailing back and forth. I said, well, I don't feel supported. And she said, no, I really do support you. And I said, I don't feel supported. And moreover, I'm super busy and I'm not going to converse about whether or not a student raised their hand. Moreover, I'm concerned that you believe that I drove 60 minutes past my job to not call on a student, but you have a great day. Needless to say, I would have problems with this student throughout the semester. The student winded up with an A-, and she reached out to me and she said at the end of the semester that she felt like that the student had reached out to her and argued that they feel like they deserve an A and that she agreed. At that point, I reached out to who would become a very, very good friend of mine, and that is Dr. Rodman King, who is now the Provost of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at SUNY Geneseo. At this time, we were both at Connecticut College. I reached out to him. It was the end of the semester. I had already handed in grades. I had no intention of doing the second semester that she asked me to do, and I said to him, you need to talk to her. I'm done. I've accepted my last paycheck, and I will not be responding, and I am uninterested completely in what she does at this point. He said, okay, great. But then he stopped responding to me. And I would learn, he's a very dear friend, so I would learn that he actually quit as well because of the racism at this campus. You can actually Google it. Maybe I'll put it right here. Everything that was going on at Connecticut College at that time. It's actually a pretty exclusive, little known college in Connecticut. And they had a lot of problems that year, specifically of which the president was given a vote of no confidence and asked to step down as a consequence of the fact that they were very vocal about the fact that they were a Trump supporter. So that's just one indication. Another experience I had is that a student, one of my first years at my job, this is when I still had support though. Sometimes your support can wane, I find, if you're discussing subject matter that people don't want to discuss, which my area of research is racism in all spaces. I discuss and study racism in medicine. I discuss racism in the K through 12 setting. I discuss inequity at the higher education level. And so this isn't always subject matter that people are interested in hearing, but I'm here to do the work. So very early on in my career here, a student reached out to higher ups and wanted me to teach them from home. They wanted to be taught from home, even though the class was not hybrid and was totally brick and mortar. And so they indicated and actually filed an official complaint that I was discriminating against them by not being willing to Zoom with them every day. And fortunately, leadership did support me, but it was an indication of what was to come, meaning that personally, what I feel is happening when these things happen, when students are constantly going up the chain without talking to the faculty member, or for that matter, believing that they can change a faculty member's mind about a decision that a faculty member has made. Actually, I feel like the demographics that are outside of the mainstream that do this work, but are viewed with very little respect as a consequence of media images, as a consequence of just what we think about people that look like me, or a Latina, or an Asian, South or East Asian. There are views about us in the larger society that cross over into academe. So if I say, no, that's not part of my contract, I'm not going to teach you from home, then the student who has been exposed to this sort of thinking about people that look like me and other faculty of color believe that we're not the last stop. Like, I'll call someone else. I'll go up the chain. So she did. And she learned that faculty are not required to teach one lesson twice because you're not in class. But that was an indication of more to come. Some of the worst experiences I have had is that I have had a group of students threaten via a thread. A lot of schools have private threads that students can utilize. And I, as part of my pedagogy, routinely have an end of semester project that is a literature review. Well, this particular class, a graduating class, did not like that. And so a student who is of color was on the thread and brought the concern to campus police, the chair, and I think the dean of students. And they told, some of them didn't answer the student, and the chair actually responded, because I was on the thread, saying to the student, "Thank you very much," and no action was taken. So the thread indicated that I was going to be hit with a chair. The student actually found me. She actually came to one of my classes. Obviously, it wouldn't have been a good idea to just, So in private, she found me and said, I am tremendously concerned about you because there is this thread in which your safety is being threatened. These are just a couple of the stories that caused me to want to create community for women faculty of color, and specifically Black women, regarding what we experience in higher education and how we can rise in higher education. I hope you'll tune in.